the Pop Shop podcast. It's Dan here, and this is a bonus episode that I'm here to introduce. What you're about to see is a discussion of the best horror films of all time, as it's spooky season. Halloween's coming up. It is an archive episode because, believe it or not, we've actually been recording these episodes now for a whole year. This episode was recorded for last Halloween and was never uploaded. So yeah, this is like a year ago this was recorded. It is a discussion on the best horror films according to myself, Jerd and Chris. And yeah, it was before Halloween 2021, but it's absolutely relevant at the minute with Halloween season coming up. So yeah, check it out. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, leave us a like, subscribe on YouTube and podcatchers, leave us a review on podcatchers, and drop us a comment on YouTube or whatever, and let us know your favourite horror films, and give us ideas for what we should do going forward on the pod. Thanks, cheers, enjoy the episode, catch. It's spooky doopy season, so let's do something maybe a bit of a fright to it. Let's do a horror movie talk. We done that again. We recorded last week, didn't work. We done a horror topic, but it's going to be different this week. It's going to be fresh, and we're just going to kind of make it kind of general. I think this week, I think we'll do the best horror movies, and next week we might do the worst. That would be fun. So let's just keep it really straightforward. What are your favourite horror films and why?
Who wants to go first?
Any use, you hit me with one. I'll go. I've got some lined up, but I'll lose better in.
I've recently watched this one. It's very cheesy. Like I watched it. Like it's not one that's. I would say it's a horror movie because it's got elements of horror, but it's kind of like a cowboy movie. It's called Bone Tomahawk. Have you ever watched that?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
yes.
Bone Tomahawk's great.
Like that. Like I thought that was a brilliant movie, and it's like just the last maybe half an hour turns drastically different from like a normal cowboy western. It's like they're eating each other, they're eating people. The guy gets split in half.
Yeah,
so it's like and like you actually see it also. It's like okay, that's turning into kind of like a kind of nice western catch the villain movie into straight up disturbing horror kind of imagery. So I was going to go with that one. I don't know if that gets disqualified because it's not traditionally horror, but
it's good.
Personally, I don't care because I really like that film, so I'm fine.
It's a western for the most part, but it is. I would have always kind of concerned like it's one of those films that I was like kind of warned of nearly before I seen it. I'd heard of it for a long time as being something special, and then when I actually seen it, I think I said. From the way I heard people talking about it, I kind of held off watching it because I'm a fucking chicken shit, to be honest with you. But when it gets into it, it's vicious. And it just is. It's pure horror. There's no like it's kind of human horror or whatever. That like, not to get into exactly what happens in it, but it is horrifying. It truly is. There's no way you can watch that film and just be like, oh yeah, that's grand or whatever. This is a nice western. It is.
You should walk away. It takes a wee bit of your soul after you've watched it. You're like, oh god.
Yeah,
I'm a wee bit embarrassed I had to look up his name, but I love the director of the film, S. Craig Zahler. He also directs every film he does. It's kind of like this. It's unexpected, and it's such an interesting blend of like your old fashioned grindhouse movies and modern filmmaking. And you've always got these kind of big stars like Kurt Russell and like really good cast. I mean, what's his name? Patrick Wilson's in Bone Tomahawk, and then you've got Dragged Across Concrete with Mel Gibson and Cell Block and Brawl and Cell Block 99 with Vince Vaughn.
Yes, I haven't seen that either, but I heard great.
All the same director, all great. Well, Dragged Across Concrete's probably his worst. That's the third one, but it's still a good film. It's still entertaining. Bone Tomahawk and Brawl and Cell Block 99 are incredible films. That guy, he captures such a unique kind of style of filmmaking, I think, and it calls back to kind of the old fashioned kind of the stuff that Tarantino was inspired by and things like that. But it also feels fresh and different, and exciting, and and if you've not seen Brawl and Cell Block 99, I would definitely recommend watching that if you enjoy Bone Tomahawk. That's more of a kind of prison movie with extreme violence, as opposed to being a western with extreme violence. But it's still a really good watch. It's Vince Vaughn's phenomenal in it.
I must like Vince Vaughn because he's done a couple of movies with Vince Vaughn. So like, did he try and restart his career? Like, he done one with Mel Gibson, no, with Vince Vaughn, that one. So he's done at least two. He's done at least two.
When he was the kind of the villain in True Detective season 2, which everyone was like, "Oh, this is shit," but I like.
Yeah,
I'm always kind of like, when you see a comedic actor in a dramatic role, I'm always just hyped for it. Even like, it might not work, but it's a good. I think it's always a good. For me, it's a very fertile ground for just enjoyment. I don't know why I had to say fertile ground for that, but it sounded a bit weird. But
yeah, Bone Tomahawk's a good shout, man.
What were you thinking? And sprung to mind?
Dan, do you want to go?
Okay, yep. I think I'm going to take one that we all probably had on our radar, and it's probably because it's the greatest horror film ever made. I'm of course talking about The Thing. The Thing is. It's got so much that I love about it.
Kurt Russell as well.
Still Kurt Russell.
It's a Kurt Russell thing.
The Thing is a timeless movie. Like, it was made 40 years ago now, and it still doesn't matter how many times you watch it. Doesn't matter what else you've seen, how desensitized you are. There's still this underlying tension through that whole film that I love. It feels so. You almost feel vulnerable watching it. See, because these guys are out in the middle of the polar themselves with nobody around for help. There's this unknown thing going about taking them over. I mean, it's also Among Us, I guess. The Among Us game is kind of based on The Thing, but yeah, like it's so well filmed, it's so well acted, it's so well written. The special effects are incredible. Again, because they went practical and they used puppets, it holds up. It doesn't look ropey now. The Thing is a masterpiece. I mean, I like John Carpenter's work beyond The Thing. I like Kurt Russell's work beyond The Thing, but I feel like that movie was just an absolute period of time that it's perfect. It's a perfect 10. That's a perfect movie. I love that film. It's not one of my favourite horror films. It's probably one of my favourite films ever. It's top 5 anyway. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it really is. I think there's that one scene where the Thing is there's one really awkward looking shot where it's like they use like a puppet or something. You know, it's like the hands are connected and the guy's arms are moving. It just looks like he's got his. I think
it's great. I do agree. Right, there's certain parts that you're saying that might be a bit goofy, but they're also disturbingly goofy. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like no, it's dumb. It's it's dumb, but that's kind of fucked up at the same time. Like there's that kind of balance that it might kind of make you smirk, but it also makes you go, oh, that's twisted. Like. Yeah.
Oh no, I meant that as just like that's one thing. Everything else is fantastic and it's unreal. Because like comparatively, I was watching John Carpenter's Vampires, and is that it? Yeah, the Vampires. The John. I put it on last week because I didn't want to watch Venom, and then like I got about halfway through the film and I was like, what the fuck? It's so shit because he got fucking James Woods just trying to be the biggest badass ever, and he's like, as time has gone on, you just know he's such an asshole. That it made the whole film really tough to watch. And then there's one of the Baldwin brothers, but it's not the one you normally see in films. It's kind of like a guy who looks very like Alec, which we'll just maybe move past that. But I know it's just a very weird film, and the effects and everything in it were really cheap. I was kind of surprised it was a John Carpenter film. But yeah, comparatively to see The Thing, I don't know what number film of his it was. It's flawless. I think really. I didn't mention that one weird shot, but everything else looks amazing still.
Yeah, I think it's a masterpiece. I'd recommend it to anyone, whether you're into horror or not. I think I'm going to be quite a specific perspective here. I don't know, maybe, but for me, horror isn't jump scares. You know, don't get me wrong, a well executed jump scare I respect. See, when it's just a jump scare for the sake of being a jump scare, that pisses me off more. It's like, yes, of course you're going to flinch when something appears on the screen and screams. Like, obviously, that's not
there's no talent in that. Do you know what I mean? Like anybody's going to flinch if somebody goes "Ugh," in their face. Like that's not art. That's just lazy writing. Whereas when you can, horror works best when you can play with the audience's mind and you can suggest things. And 9 times out of 10, when I'm watching a horror film, what is happening in my head is far more horrifying than what's on the screen. Yeah. When it's a good horror film, when it's something like The Thing or like other movies that I'm going to mention, that's the pinnacle of horror to me. See, just when you show the monster, it immediately becomes less scary. As soon as you see the monster in the film, you're like, oh well, I know what it looks like now. So that takes so much of that kind of fear and expectation out of it, I think. Which is why I always think the monsters you don't see are the scariest ones, because it's all in your head at that point. But yeah, The Thing's a masterpiece, and that's my reasoning for it.
What about you, Jared? What's your magical pick?
This one isn't necessarily. It's just I was thinking like, what are the best horror films or whatever. But like, this is the one film that has just stood out to me. Is I remember trying to watch it when I was like in my early 20s, and I just turned it off. It just freaked the shit out of me. Like, and I kind of think it's ghosts, particularly, that get me in stories. That's the one that really gets to me.
Right.
I'm a chicken shit anyway. I've tried to watch many horror films by myself, and I've had to like turn them off and stuff. It happens. But this one film, during the pandemic, I started a kind of watch along horror thing with a load of friends from college, and I watched more horrors during the pandemic than I watched at any time in my life. In that, I don't know, something about dark sci-fi zombie stuff I really loved, which I always did. But The Woman in Black, which was like Daniel Radcliffe vehicle from 2012, and it was one of those films where it's like he's made some very interesting choices since, and like nearly everything he does now is a very interesting choice. But this was kind of just like, you know, one of his first kind of films out of the Harry Potter series. It was, you know, a popcorn kind of movie. But I could remember when I was in my early 20s, I couldn't watch it. Tried to watch it again, and I could only finish it because I had my horror buddies. Like, they were actually in Scotland at the time, and I was live texting with them while watching it. But I tried to watch it again myself. Like, at that time, I needed that help to get through it. And it is... It is that sort of, like you were saying, Dan, it's not what's actually there. What it was there was terrifying me anyway, but it was also just the anticipation of knowing something was going to happen. And it's a fine film, but it's the one that stood out to me as like not being able to finish it by myself multiple times until I had someone basically holding my hand, well, digitally, because they weren't beside me, but I couldn't finish it by myself. It just freaked the shit out of me. And then when you watch a ghost film, I'm always like, so I can go outside now, my landing's going to be dark. Even just go, like, get back to that phase of being a kid where you're like, turn on the fucking light, because if you don't do it, someone's going to fucking run up and get you. Like, I just went back to that. So, yeah, Woman in Black scared the shit out of me. Have you seen it?
Yes.
I have. That's the one where, like, it's interesting because it does happen to you. Like, even if you hear noises or anything like that, that's what that is all about. I can remember you don't really see the women in mostly. You just hear like tweaks and stuff, and then he goes in a corner, and then you could experience that yourself because you hear like stuff happening in your ears. And you're like, oh, shit, somebody's watching this. But,
well, to me, the mark of a great horror film is one that stays with you. Like, after you've seen it, something that stays with you and lives rent free in your head for a few days is the mark of a clever horror movie maker. This is, I think, why horror is one of the most fascinating genres of movies to talk about, though, because it is so subjective. Like, something that scares the absolute shit out of Jerd, like Women in Black or any other ghost movie, doesn't bother me in the slightest. Ghost movies have never ever affected me. I think a big part is I don't believe in ghosts in real life. I don't think that's a thing. I think you're dead and that's it. But some people, you know, think that spirits hang about, so maybe that's why I'm so kind of narrow, but not narrow-minded, because I'll still watch a ghost film. I just that stuff, like we're talking about stuff that stays with you, that stuff doesn't stay with me. Like, even if it is scary when I'm watching it, I know that ghosts aren't real, so as soon as I put the film off, it's gone.
Yeah.
whereas something like a serial killer, one of the movies, I'll tell you just now, one of my movies I was going to bring up was Wolf Creek, which is about a serial killer in Australia. And it is a bit cheesy, it is a bit corny, it's a bit cheap feeling, but I kind of like that with horror. I don't like super polished horror films. I like kind of like more guerrilla kind of indie horror films. Yeah, and Wolf Creek's about a serial killer, and guess what? There are serial killers out there. There's
Yeah.
people out there that will
There's
drop and
people
kill
that
you
will
just
kill
for
you,
shits and
yeah.
gigs. That is terrifying to me. That scares a shit out of me way more than like ghosts or demons or any of that, because I know that's real. Do you know what I mean? So I find that way more disturbing. Whereas that's why horror's so fascinating, because everybody's different.
What I think is just
That kind of-
just for ghosts, it's not like zombies. That's a whole lot of thing. You have to imagine zombies and how they would happen. That and this will do stay with me. But ghosts in a film, you only see them for a second. So really, even though they're less likely, you only have to imagine them, or for them to be there, they only have to be there for a second. So it doesn't require as much imagination. And if I just literally opened my door and there was like someone just screaming at me, I'd fucking die of a heart attack straight away. But yeah, you've far less imagination. Like to imagine zombies actually happen, that's a whole other process. But ghosts, you only have to be there for a second and they'll get you. My
that's a good point. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I've never thought of it like that, but I guess you only need to see a ghost once for it to be real. Whereas, that's a good point.
Second.
I mean, I've always said, although I don't believe in ghosts, if I ever did see one, I'm happy to change my mind.
So, back on your point, Jerd, with the ghost, I'm going to choose House of 1,000 Corpses. Is anybody familiar with Rob
Zombie?
Rob Zombie?
I'm not. I haven't seen much of the stuff.
I kind of hate his work.
Do you hate it?
Yeah.
Man, it's like a complete like visual fuckfest, like of like what the hell is going on. Like, people just getting locked right in center, killed in front of you. It's spoilers. It's a Rob Zombie film, but I'm petrified of clowns. So, like when
I get that.
When I think it's like Sid Haig or something. I think he's Captain something. I can't remember his name. I'm not really a big fan of it, but when I watched that movie, he was an eye opener. So,
I've never trusted people in costumes personally. See when you see like the bears and the mascots cutting about, and you can't see their faces. So I'm like, something's up there, man. Don't like that. Don't like that.
Oh, yeah.
But House of 1,000 Corpses, I seen it when I was probably when I was at uni, when I was a student, and I just never really did it for me. It was fine.
I don't like that goriness of things. I don't like seeing a lot of blood and stuff. So it was completely like a really hit in the face for me, because I'm like, I don't like that.
But my thing with Rob Zombie's gore and stuff, to me, it's always seemed very Halloween costume. Rob Zombie's kind of violence,
over the top. Yeah.
And I think, well, I mean, the reason I hate the guy is because of the Halloween remake. Like what he did to talk about John Carpenter, what he did to Halloween was unforgivable. But
was it the most recent one? Did he do that one?
No. He did one in like 2006, 2007.
H2O?
No, that was that not Jason H2O? No, was that Halloween? I thought it was Halloween, but no, that wasn't him. No, that was him. That was still part of the original series, I think. No, he rebooted it. He made 2 movies, and they were both garbage. But
oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, that one. He put his wife in that as well, didn't he? His wife's in everything he fucking makes.
Couldn't tell you, man.
Well,
but weird. That was I've recently watched that. I'm not really into like Rob Zombie. I was like, alright, okay. I've never really watched many of his movies. I was like, let's give it a go. And it's sickening. If you want to watch it, it's like, well, but you can get through it if you really want to understand it.
That's a question. That's a kind of sidebar question. Has there ever been a point where you've been watching something and you've had to stop eating? Like horror or otherwise? But
stop eating?
Anything with blood, I can't really...
Really?
Yeah. I remember trying
because
to watch...
I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can sit and watch pretty much anything. And
what? Oh,
yeah, it takes...
I can't do that.
I'll sit and watch. I mean, recently I've been rewatching the Jackass movies for the new one coming out, and they all lie to each other and shit in boxes and stuff, and I'm just watching my lunch glasses quality. And it's the same with like The Exorcist. Like I remember having pizza watching that and just being absolutely fine. Like
I would have. Ghosts scare me, but ghosts wouldn't stop me eating.
Yeah.
But like I remember even watching Penny Dreadful, and Billy Piper's character had like is it influenza or the plague or something? But she's briding the Dorian Gray character and she's coughing up blood. And I remember just eating pasta. I was like, oh, can't do that. The sex didn't bother me. It was just the coughing up blood. So yeah, I think any blood or any bit of gore I can't eat. But if I'm scared, I can still eat.
The closest thing where I thought this is a bit wrong was when I was watching Chernobyl, the HBO series. And there was some really kind of graphic, depressing parts of that because you know what really happened. And I'm sitting eating my knickknacks going, I don't know if this is the right mood I'm in to be eating my snacks. Do you know what I mean? Watching people's faces falling off and that actually really happened. You're like, this doesn't feel right. But I still finished the bag. But yeah.
I guess it depends. For me, if it's like, if there's blood and people getting cut, I can't eat meat.
Right. Oh, right. Really? Wow.
So, like,
That's
with crisps. Like, if someone's getting their face chopped up, and I think
depends what you're eating.
Yeah. Or like, if they had like really intense dandruff or skin condition, I probably couldn't eat crisps then.
Parmesan cheese and that. Yeah.
Yeah. If they match up, I guess.
Oh well, that was at least that spurred conversation. Now we don't know what to eat. Watch fucking movies.
So we're getting down to what scares us and what we can eat when
we can eat one.
The two most important things in life, really, right? So you need to know about a person.
Yeah. Dad can eat anything. Jerd can't eat meat when he's watching blood. He can eat crisps when he's watching like dandruff or something like that. But it's fine.
Even just thinking of dandruff now are like really intense. There was sometimes you see people on the street, they've got like shit on their head. You're like, oh, they're looking, but it's there.
It's when you're sitting behind someone, like in the theatre or on the bus, and you can see
the
back of their heads.
The jacket.
Like,
you're like,
I really want to just brush it off, but you can't do it.
That's what I'd like to see. Get at it or speak.
You need to invest in some Head and Shoulders, like
conditioner, please.
Slightly.
Right, shall we move on to my next pick?
What's your next one?
My next one and final one, we're all doing two each. I guess the question is, you can only watch two horror films for the rest of your life. It would be The Thing and Hereditary. Would be my second.
Hereditary.
Oh yes.
Is a way more recent example by Ari Aster. Ari Aster's first movie, which is still mind blowing to me that was someone's first film. It is talking about movies. It's maybe not the scariest kind of when you're watching it movie that we've spoke about tonight, or just in general. But in talking about films that stay with you, Hereditary really kind of might emotionally scar you. It's so weird to talk about because I wouldn't even say it's a scary movie. But it is a really disturbing movie, and I don't think those are the same thing. I think watching something and being really deeply, I guess the opposite of like moved emotionally would be like disturbed emotionally, and that's what that movie does. It's not I wouldn't really say it's one to like put on with your mates. It's not like, oh, let's all get mad at it and watch Hereditary. It's not that kind of horror film. Do you know what I mean? It's one to just kind of terrorise yourself with. But I think it's an absolute. Again, if you talk about filmmaking, I think it's a masterpiece. I think the clues in that movie that lead up to the finale, the performances. But again, we spoke about earlier, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. Different shit scares different people. We've spoken about that already, and there's some people that I've seen online laugh at Hereditary. They think it's hilarious. Like, have you guys seen it?
No,
I have
seen it. No.
So this scene's in the trailer, so this isn't really a spoiler, but I would recommend watching it, Chris. But there's a scene where a certain character, I won't say who it is banging their head on what looks like the floor because of the way it's shot, but it's actually the attic. She's on the ceiling, banging her head off the attic door, and I found that so distressing. See that noise and knowing that somebody was in there and that thing's outside trying to get in. Put yourself in that position, and again, it's that thing of, although you can see her banging her head in the door, the person in the basement can't see her, so it's something that's not within your sight. So it's that whole thing playing on your imagination, this thing banging it, and it's the way she's so frantically banging, dying again, and it feels like her head's going to come through the door at one point, and I found that so distressing. People found that hilarious. People thought it was really funny, like a jack in the box, or like something banging, like a woodpecker, like banging its head. Do you know what I mean? People on Reddit stuff are like, oh, that didn't get me at all, whereas I found that so deeply distressing, and it's amazing how it kind of differs for everybody.
was it an actual thing, or was it like is it
I
psychological?
don't want to give it away.
can't go that far, no.
Nah, you
Yeah,
didn't watch it.
I think a lot of that is down to the character, who it is, and the performance of Toni Collette. She's fucking always been.
Well, we can go into that as well. The fact that horror movies get ignored every time it comes to Oscar season. How she didn't get at least a nomination for that is forever beyond me. That is, if an Oscar goes to a person that gives a great performance, that is one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in anything ever. Insane that she wasn't recognised for that. But the Oscars are bullshit anyway. But let's not go into that. Yes, that movie and that scene, and again everything about the film, the way that it builds up, the way that we were talking about movies that kind of take a turn at a certain point, kind of like Bone Tomahawk, Hereditary, similar. It starts off with this really kind of emotional. There is something underlyingly disturbing about it, but not explicitly disturbing. Kind of for the first 3/4 of the movie, and then the last quarter it's just balls to the wall madness. Do you know what I mean? Then it does kind of take that step up, quite suddenly, but it also feels earned. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like, oh, here we go, this is the scary bit of the film. Like, it feels like it's justified, and everything that's led up to it, it had to have ended that way. And it is a really kind of sad, tragic ending, but also really messed up. And I don't know, man, it stayed with me. That film's a masterpiece.
I'll give it a wee
I can't say too much more because you've not seen it.
Yeah, it's a film you got to watch.
But yeah, I absolutely recommend it.
I think we're very lucky now in this day and age that we do have a lot of. We've kind of come back to will I go with my one now?
Aye.
I might just do a few honourable mentions before I do it.
Sure.
I'm kind of surprised with myself, the choices I'm making here, but I'm just trying to think of films that really stuck with me, and neither of them are like. Okay, first of all, Halloween is the best Halloween film, hands down. I love watching it. Don't think it's that scary. I just fucking love the music. I love the whole vibe
iconic.
about it.
It's iconic, yeah.
The Shining. I also had an experience of that where I couldn't get through it. It's just after watching it so many times, I was like, "Oh, this isn't even that scary." But like, I remember one particular time I just couldn't finish it.
That was going to be my third choice.
And he goes in, the woman's in there. I just couldn't get past it. I had to turn it off.
What a scene! What a scene!
Out of fucking left and center, not even. The Hills Have Eyes remake. I remember watching and kind of going to Hereditary. Again, seemed like this schlocky kind of film, but I watched it, and the fact that it's a family that are involved in the story, and not just like a group of teenagers who all get picked off one by one. The fact that it was a family getting picked off one by one, and that's why I think Hereditary probably has that extra vibe. It's it's the character's mother. It just stuck with me. It really stuck with me. And I remember, again, watched that when I was probably in my late teens or early 20s. Of all horror films, it was the one that, just from our discussion now, I think there's better made horror films or whatever. But, this is a remake of a film, of whatever. I haven't even seen the original Hills of Eyes, and it's very schlocky, the remake. It's very kind of action-y in bits. But the fact that it was a family getting picked off one by one just fucking stuck with me. And...
Right.
Yeah, I can't say anything more than that. That's literally it. It's just, it really stuck with me, and it really kind of not only just horrified me, but kind of made me feel sad for the family days after watching the film. And even thinking back now, I'm getting a little bit teary about it. It was really sad.
I think that's an absolutely relevant kind of piece of when you're analysing a horror film, something to think about. I mean, have you guys seen The Mist, the Frank Darabont Mist movie with Thomas Jane?
Yeah.
Oh my god, do you know how that film ends?
Oh, I've seen it with
Jesus Christ!
He
kills all... Right, spoilers, right?
Aye, spoilers.
They think they're done for, right? They think they're dead. They're in a car, and I think there's no gas, and there's monsters everywhere. They think they're going to eat alive. So he does what he has to do. He kills his wife and kids. There's not enough bullets in the gun to kill himself. So he gets out the car to let the monsters take him. And the army or whoever come in and everything's fine. The monsters are gone. And he just shot his whole family for nothing. and then the movie just ends. It's just credits, deal with that. And you're honestly, in terms of ballsy endings, that's got to be the ballsiest ending ever to a film.
Yeah.
What a way to end a movie.
That wasn't a remake at all, was it?
I think it was. Well, it was it might not be a remake, but it may be based on an old, maybe like an adaptation of an older film. Yeah, it's not a totally original idea, but
Yeah,
Is
I
it not
wasn't
from?
confused with that.
It's from Stephen King, is it not?
Yes, yeah, it's a Stephen King short story. I think it's adapted from, but again, Stephen King probably took influence from other places.
But yeah, it is kind of interesting when you just say, what does he do after that? Like, he's killed his whole family.
Get another gun, I'd say.
Absolutely, just the worst ending ever, but also one of the greatest. Like,
it's
the fact that the studio said aye, and that made it through like
like,
editing and everything. Like, fair play to them, man. Like, even if you don't like that film, what a ballsy ending.
Man, look at them.
Also, just I know we're kind of want to move on, but I just want to mention Shaun of the Dead. I feel like we can't move on without mentioning.
I was going to.
What a masterpiece that is. Yeah, I mean, I know that it's technically a comedy, and it's not 100%. It's definitely not. It's not one you put to get scared, but in terms of horror genre movies, it is, I think, one of the great films ever made.
It's always worth a watch.
Phenomenal film.
Phenomenal film.
Okay, with that, let's kind of just wrap up. Have you guys been to the cinema? Have you read anything this week? Comics? What have you been up to?
I've been doing something that's probably controversial. I've been watching Seinfeld on Netflix. I don't know.
When you said you were doing something controversial,
I know, but some people like either love or hate the show. Like, I've never really watched it, so I'm kind of enjoying it. But it's like, it's not like funny, but it's like you can sit and watch it.
I don't dislike Seinfeld, but I just found it's one of the most overrated shows ever. Like,
yeah,
it's fine.
I only seen it for the first time a couple of years ago. I really enjoyed it, the kind of humor of it, and then I became an even bigger fan of Curb, which my housemate is watching Seinfeld at the moment now, and the way I was talking in some group about it recently, where it was like Seinfeld and Curb have the same kernels of humor, same kind of situations, but Seinfeld is very theatrical and overplayed, and Curb gets like that too. Like even the later seasons of Curb, I'd feel that. But Curb generally, and when Curb is best, it's the same type of like situational idiosyncrasy kind of humor. But in Curb, it's more like, I don't know, they can curse, but it's also kind of done
it's less on the nose,
improvised, and it's more cursing and more lifelike, really. But then it isn't at the same time. But I think it is a general rule for both of them.
You can tell that that's like watching that back. You definitely saw the similarities, and you can see that it's Larry David was the person. Even though Seinfeld probably done a lot in it, you saw it's influenced heavy on Larry David.
His fingerprints are all over it.
Yeah. So you're like, as soon as you mentioned that, Jerd, I connected. I was like, yeah, that is totally is.
Yeah.
He's better within it. So it's.
But I can never remember how fucking when Larry actually left it, but I think Seinfeld was pretty much up and running. Like, I have friends who watched it way more than, like, I literally only watched Seinfeld properly once the way through, so I'm not fully up on when Larry left. But I think it's only like 2.5 seasons maybe that he didn't work on, or maybe it's...
I'm only on the second season, so you could feel that he's definitely there. He's even in some episodes, you're like, oh, there he is.
Shows up, he's the guy with the cape. He voices another character, one of George's bosses that he doesn't play him, but you just see the back of his head. It's just like Larry doing a very voice. And Larry was supposed to be, well, not supposed to be, but George is Larry David.
Yeah, George is Larry David. Yeah. George is supposed to be him.
It's a very funny. I won't spoil it, but there's a kind of a reprisal in Curb of Seinfeld.
Oh yeah, Curb Enthusiasm. I've definitely watched that.
Not exactly a reunion, but as close as you get.
Jerd, what about yourself? What have you been into?
I've been good at watching horror stuff. I'm usually better, but I've started a new job, so I don't have as much time. But I've watched Squid Game. I just finished it last night, and I watched Midnight Mass. Okay. Which, if you haven't seen Midnight Mass, don't look up anything. I've seen people there's like a episode 4 twist, which is not really a twist, but it's kind of a twist, but you shouldn't know it before going in. You should go in blind to Midnight Mass. I like both. I probably liked Squid Game more. Right. Even though the early half of Midnight Mass I thought was fantastic, but the ending I was like...
I've yet to get through round to seeing either of those shows. Squid Game, I've been kind of the things about me off Squid Game is all there is to it. It's this island, and all these folk are on it, and some of them survive these games, some of them don't, and then every episode is a different game. Or is there? Surely there must be more to it than that. That's all I know about it.
It's like,
to me, that's not really worth watching. I need something,
Oh, it's definitely worth watching. Yeah. Oh,
Right.
without a doubt. And a lot of it is down to the performance. Like, even some of the story elements at the very end, you're like, something like that. But I'd say even both shows are just worth a watch. Like, I'm get nitpicky with stuff, and then I watch something, and then like a week later, I'll be like, oh, what about that though? But like, both shows are just worth a watch because they're like Mike Flanagan, I think, is the guy behind Midnight Mass. I haven't seen any of his other stuff, but
well, the reason that I'm hesitant to go into that is because I'm extremely touch and go with his other stuff. I love Jerd's Game. If you've not seen Jerd's Game, that is a phenomenal horror film. Again, really disturbing. Masterpiece. Carla Gugino is incredible in that film. So there's Jerd's Game. He did The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, both of which I kind of hated. Not my thing at all. Talking about lazy jump scares and things like that, those were full of them. There's one scene in particular in The Haunting of Hill House. The two female characters are in a car having a conversation, and between the seats, out of nowhere, this ghost between the seats.
Did that get me?
And I was like, "What? Where did that come from?" So much of Haunting Hill House was that it was that kind of situation. Two characters having a conversation, a jump scare would happen, and then it would cut to another scene. And then same thing again, two characters jump scare, and then it would cut back to the other scene, and then they wouldn't even talk about the ghost that was just in the back seat. It's like, what? Honestly, that pissed me off so much, that show. Whereas Doctor Sleep, he made the sequel to The Shining with Mike Flanagan. What a film that is. Brilliant movie. I went in with high expectations. I love The Shining, I love Kubrick. So the fact that I walked away enjoying that film, Mike Flanagan is so touch and go for me. Some of his stuff I love, some of his stuff I hate. So I want to see Midnight Mass because I hope it's good. I hope it's in that kind of echelon of stuff that I do enjoy.
Yeah, it's like there. Like I wouldn't say there isn't jump scares, but it's more about the story. Sure. Jump scares weren't like there wasn't. It's more like you kind of want to know what was going on, and but like I have seen people talking about it online where you're like, oh blah blah, like that. You're completely fucking spoiling that show by what you're saying. So don't look up anything about it.
Okay.
And like Squid Game. It's games, it's murder. It's like, but it's more important than the watching of it. And I had issues with both, but they're both well worth the watch. And like that kind of addictive. Okay, I'll just watch one episode, and then you fly through it. Like,
Well, the other reason I've not got around to either of those is because I'm still watching Sopranos. That's what I've just been absolutely mainlining for the last couple of weeks. I'm on season 3. Ralphie's just killed the stripper, and everybody wants to kill Ralphie, but we all know he doesn't get killed until the next season. But what a character though! Like Joe Pantaniello's performance is he's insufferably horrific in that show, but what a brilliant actor. So I've been watching that, and as I said, I've been playing Ghost Recon, which has just totally changed from the way that it initially launched. I've been reading any comics. The last comic I read was Berserker. That series is still going, the Keanu series.
Oh yeah.
It's issue 5 was the highest point since issue 1, but I still wouldn't say it's great. I'm going to stick with it and see where it goes, but we'll see. I can't recommend it like thoroughly.
I did read an interesting Marvel book that I got Marvel Unlimited.
Okay.
And I was buying a monthly, which I think was like I can't remember, it's like $10 or €12, or I can't remember exactly, but I bought the year subscription, which is like €60 maybe. So we're working with a lot of currencies here because you're on pound, but I passed it and I didn't think much of it, but it was just like some Spider-Man story, and it looked a bit goofy at the start. There's like werewolves and stuff. I'm like, what's this? I'm always a little bit hesitant of like seeing whatever, but I found out in reference, there's rumors that Jonathan Hickman and Chris Baccello, really kind of bombastic looking artists,
right? Not his work.
Probably saying his name horrendously, but I there's a rumor now that they could be taking up a Spider-Man book.
Okay.
Not Amazing Spider-Man, but a different Spider-Man book. But it just mentioned that the last Spider-Man thing they worked on was this Spider-Man Full Circle, And then I just looked up what it was about. It's like 80 pages. It's not just them, it's like multiple heavy hitting writer artist teams. And it starts with, I can't remember who starts it. It's Chris it could be them two actually who starts it, Chris Bacalillo and Jonathan Hickman. And the way it's worked out is one team started, just like I said, the first chapter. They have to resolve a plot point and set up a cliffhanger for the next team. And it just carries on like that. And then at the very end, it's like a load of writers working together, and they actually, in the back matter, they have the email conversations of all the different writers working together to work out what the ending is. And it gets a bit convoluted. They kind of hang a lantern on it, which doesn't fully, resolve. It doesn't fully go, okay, that's all right. It does get convoluted, and at certain points, it's like, oh, really? But once I finished it, I was just like, this is fucking great. And there's werewolves. They're not the main part of the story, but there's werewolves, and the art is fantastic. There's like Mike Allred. I'm struggling to think of anyone else, but the art's great.
When did Full Circle drop? That was like 5 years ago, right?
No, but 2019, I think.
Oh, is that recent? I remember I read it at the time. I remember reading it and enjoying it, but it's one of the ones that I read it once and kind of struggle to remember a lot of it.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought it was ages ago, but obviously my memory's just awful. But yeah, I remember enjoying it though. I remember.
It's just like fun, recent Spider-Man that you can just pick up and fucking read, and it's got werewolves, so it's kind of horror for the moment.
It's got werewolves.
Tangentially.
Wowee, was that not a great episode or what? I'm Dan, back again at the end of the episode, just to remind you guys, if you enjoyed that discussion, to leave us a subscription, leave us a comment, leave us a like, share it if you really enjoyed that, and yeah, look forward to the podcast being uploaded again next week when we'll be here to talk like current nerd news. But until then, all the best, cheers, and see you on the next page.